The gallery was a vibrant sea of colors and emotions, a refuge where I often sought solace and inspiration. That evening, I was drawn to a new exhibition by a renowned contemporary artist, eager to immerse myself in the kaleidoscope of creativity. Little did I know, this visit would shatter the very fabric of my life. As I strolled through the gallery, the sound of light laughter caught my attention. Turning towards the source, my heart skipped a beat. There, in front of a mesmerizing canvas, stood my wife Mary, with another man. They were engrossed in conversation, their bodies leaning towards each other in a manner that spoke volumes. My blood ran cold as I recognized the man, Tom, a mutual acquaintance, someone I never considered a threat. They were completely absorbed in each other, oblivious to the world around them. Their fingers brushed lightly as they pointed out details in the painting, and I noticed the way Mary's eyes sparkled when she looked at him. A sparkle I hadn't seen directed at me for a long time. They whispered and giggled, their intimacy unmistakable. It was as if they were the only two people in the room, a pair of love-struck doves cooing in a garden of art. I stepped behind a large sculpture, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was witnessing. Was it really what it seemed? I wanted to rush out, confront them, and demand an explanation. But my legs felt like lead, and my voice was caught in my throat. Instead, I stood frozen, a silent observer of my nightmare. As I continued to watch, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Mary's hand slipped into Tom's, and he squeezed it gently. They exchanged a glance that spoke of a deep shared connection. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, sadness. How long had this been going on? How had I been so blind? I remembered the subtle changes in Mary's behavior over the past few months. The late-night meetings, the unexplained absences, the sudden interest in dressing up for seemingly mundane errands. It all began to add up, each memory a piece of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to see. The evidence of her betrayal was right in front of me, undeniable and painful. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms as I fought to control the wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. How could she do this to us? To me? I thought we were happy, that our life together was solid and unshakable. But in that moment, I realized how fragile it all was, how easily it could be shattered by deceit. Their laughter echoed in my ears, a cruel reminder of my naivety. I watched as Tom leaned in closer to Mary, whispering something that made her blush and smile. She looked at him with an adoration that cut me to the core. The realization hit me like a freight train. This was not a fleeting affair. This was something deeper, more insidious. As they moved to the next painting, still hand in hand, I knew I had to act. But not now, not here. Confronting them in the middle of the gallery would only cause a scene and give them the upper hand. No, I needed to be smart, gather evidence, and plan my next steps carefully. My mind raced with thoughts of how to uncover the full extent of their betrayal. I turned and left the gallery, my vision blurred with tears of rage and heartbreak. The cool night air hit my face, but it did little to soothe the fire burning inside me. As I walked away, one thing became clear. I would make sure Mary regretted every moment she spent with Tom. I would not be made a fool of, and I would see to it that justice was served. The path ahead was uncertain and filled with pain, but I knew I had to face it. For now, I would gather my strength and prepare for the battle that lay ahead. This was only the beginning, and I was determined to come out on top, no matter the cost. The drive home from the gallery felt interminable, my mind a turbulent sea of conflicting thoughts and emotions. Every red light, every passing car, seemed like a cruel reminder of the scene I had just witnessed. As I pulled into our driveway, the house that once felt like a haven now seemed like a hollow shell, echoing with unspoken truths. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the front door, trying to muster the strength to face Mary. The memory of her laughter with Tom played on a loop in my head, each repetition a stab to my heart. I couldn't just walk in and pretend everything was fine. I needed to understand how we had come to this point. Inside, the house was quiet. Mary had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to bed early, long day, love you." The words felt like a mockery. I crumpled the note in my hand, my mind racing back to the little things that, at the time, seemed insignificant but now felt like glaring red flags. There was a sudden interest in yoga classes, something Mary had never mentioned before. She claimed it was for stress relief, but the timing coincided with when I first noticed her taking more care of her appearance. New clothes, a change in hairstyle, even a new perfume, all brushed off as simply wanting to feel better about herself. Then there were the phone calls she would take in another room, her voice hushed, and the quick, almost guilty way she would end the conversation when I walked in. I had dismissed it as work-related stress, thinking she just needed some space. But now, in the harsh light of what I had seen, it was clear those calls were something more. I remembered the business trips that had suddenly increased in frequency. Mary had always been dedicated to her career, but these trips seemed excessive. She would return home late, exhausted but oddly distant, her explanations vague and unconvincing. I had wanted to trust her, to believe that our marriage was strong enough to withstand any pressures. But the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, each one revealing a picture of deceit. There was the night she came home with a necklace, claiming it was a gift from a friend. I had accepted the explanation without question, but now I wondered if it had been from Tom. The way she clutched it, the secretive smile, how had I missed the signs? My mind went back to a dinner party a few months ago. Tom had been there too. I remembered how Mary had seemed unusually attentive to him, laughing at his jokes, brushing his arm. At the time, I had written it off as friendly camaraderie, but now it felt like a blatant display of their growing connection. I felt a surge of anger at myself for not seeing it sooner, for letting my love for Mary blind me to the truth. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I knew I needed to be strategic. Rushing in without a plan would only give her the chance to cover her tracks. I went to our bedroom and found Mary already asleep. She looked peaceful, her face free of the guilt and deceit that was now consuming me. I watched her for a moment, torn between love and betrayal. How could she do this to us? To me? Lying in bed, I replayed every moment, every clue, over and over. Sleep eluded me as doubts and suspicions swirled in my mind. I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal, to uncover every lie she had told. Only then could I decide what to do next. Lying in bed, sleep eluded me. My mind was consumed by the past months, analyzing every interaction and every behavior change. The doubts I had pushed aside now screamed for attention. I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal, to uncover every lie she had told. As the first light of dawn crept into the room, I made a silent vow. I would find out the truth no matter how painful. Mary had sown the seeds of doubt, and now I would unravel the web of deceit she had woven. There was no turning back. The morning light cast long shadows across the bedroom, but sleep had eluded me entirely. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the previous evening over and over. The seeds of doubt had firmly taken root, and I knew I needed to act. Confronting Mary without concrete proof would only lead to more lies and deceit. I needed irrefutable evidence. Over the next few days, I methodically prepared to gather the proof I needed. I purchased a small, high-definition hidden camera online, the kind discreet enough to blend into our home environment. I also downloaded monitoring software to track phone activities, which would help me keep tabs on Mary's and Tom's communications. When the camera arrived, I carefully installed it in the living room, strategically positioning it to capture the most activity without drawing attention. I chose a spot on the bookshelf, nestled between a couple of decorative items. From this vantage point, it would have a clear view of the room where Mary and I spent most of our evenings. With the camera in place, I turned my attention to the phones. Mary had become increasingly protective of her phone, rarely leaving it unattended. I needed a moment when she was distracted. One evening, she left her phone charging in the kitchen while she showered. I seized the opportunity and quickly installed the monitoring software. My heart raced as I worked, but I finished just as she stepped out of the bathroom, oblivious to what I had done. Days turned into weeks as I patiently gathered evidence. The hidden camera captured hours of footage, and the monitoring software logged countless messages and calls. I spent late nights sifting through the data, my heart sinking with each discovery. One night, I found what I was looking for. Mary had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the garden. I scrolled through her messages and found a string of texts from Tom. They were explicit and intimate, leaving no room for doubt about the nature of their relationship. My hand shook as I took screenshots, documenting everything. The hidden camera footage was equally damning. On several occasions, when I was supposedly working late, Tom had come over. The footage showed them sitting close on the couch, talking and laughing, their touches becoming increasingly intimate. It was all there. The kisses, the whispered conversations, the moments of affection that should have been reserved for us alone. One video in particular stood out. It was a quiet evening, and Mary had invited Tom over. They sat on the couch, their bodies pressed close together. Tom leaned in, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh softly. Then he kissed her, a deep, lingering kiss that left no doubt about their feelings for each other. Watching it felt like a knife twisting in my heart. The phone records provided further proof. Calls at odd hours, often late at night or early in the morning. Voicemails from Tom, his voice filled with longing and affection. It was a complete betrayal, and now I had all the evidence I needed. Armed with this proof, I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. The doubts and suspicions that had plagued me were now confirmed. There was no more wondering, no more questioning. The truth was laid bare, stark, and undeniable. I knew what I had to do next. Confronting Mary would be inevitable, but I needed to plan my approach carefully. This was only the beginning of the journey towards justice and reclaiming my life. As I organized the evidence, a sense of determination washed over me. Mary had made her choices, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. The hunt for proof was over. The next phase of my plan was about to begin, and I was ready to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. The evidence I had gathered over the past few weeks was irrefutable. The hidden camera footage, the messages, the phone calls, they all painted a clear picture of Mary's betrayal. As much as it pained me, I knew I couldn't continue living a lie. It was time to confront her and face the truth head on. That evening, I waited for Mary to come home. The tension in the house was palpable, each tick of the clock echoing like a drumbeat in my ears. I had laid out the evidence on the dining room table, my heart pounding in anticipation of what was to come. The moment she walked through the door, I knew there was no turning back. "Jack, is everything okay?" she asked, noticing my serious demeanor. "Mary, we need to talk," I replied, my voice steady but cold. "Sit down." She hesitated, a flicker of worry crossing her face, but she complied, taking a seat at the table. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to happen. "I know about you and Tom," I said, cutting straight to the point. "I've seen the messages, the calls, the videos. I know everything." Mary's eyes widened in shock. For a moment she was speechless, her mouth opening and closing as if trying to find the right words. "What are you talking about?" she finally said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what you mean." I reached for the stack of evidence on the table, spreading out the screenshots of her text messages with Tom, the logs of their phone calls, and still images from the videos. Each piece of evidence was like a nail in the coffin of our marriage. "Don't lie to me, Mary. I have proof," I said, my voice hardening. "I saw you with him. I heard your conversations. I watched the videos of you two together in our home. How could you do this to us? To me?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she scanned the damning evidence. Her initial shock turned to a desperate attempt to deny it all. "Jack, please. This isn't what it looks like," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Tom and I are just friends. Those messages are innocent, and those calls, they're about work. The videos don't show anything inappropriate." "Enough, Mary," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "I saw you kiss him. I heard the things you said to each other. This isn't just a friendship, and you know it. Stop lying to me." She broke down, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she sobbed. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jack." "So it's true then," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You and Tom, you're having an affair." She nodded, her face contorted with guilt and shame. "Yes," she admitted, her voice shaking. "Tom and we've been seeing each other for a few months now. It started as just a fling, but it got out of hand. I'm so sorry, Jack." The weight of her confession hit me like a ton of bricks. Despite all the evidence, hearing her say it out loud made it unbearably real. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. "Why, Mary?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why did you do it?" She wiped her tears, struggling to compose herself. "I don't know," she said, her voice hollow. "I guess I felt something was missing between us. Tom made me feel special and appreciated, but I never wanted to hurt you, Jack. I thought I could keep both lives separate. Well, you were wrong, I said, my anger resurfacing. You've destroyed everything we had. And for what? A few months of feeling special? Was it worth it? She shook her head, sobbing uncontrollably. No, it wasn't. I realize that now. I love you, Jack. Please, let me make it right. I'll end it with Tom. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I looked at her, the woman I had once adored, now reduced to a pitiful, broken figure. Part of me wanted to believe her, to give her a chance to make things right, but the betrayal was too deep, the wounds too fresh. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Mary, I said, my voice cold and detached. You've shattered my trust, and I don't think there's any way to repair it. For now, I need you to leave. I need time to think. She nodded, defeated. I understand, she whispered. I'll give you space, but please know that I am truly sorry. I never wanted this to happen. As she packed a bag and left the house, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, anger, and a hollow emptiness. The confrontation was over, but the aftermath was just beginning. I was left alone to pick up the pieces of my broken heart and decide what my next steps would be. The days following Mary's departure were a blur. The house felt emptier, each room echoing with memories of better times. I went through the motions of my daily routine, but a part of me was numb, still reeling from the confrontation. I hadn't heard from Mary since that night, and while I appreciated the space, a part of me wondered how she was coping. It was late one evening when my phone buzzed with a message from her. I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I was ready to face whatever she had to say. Jack, can we talk? I need to see you, please. I stared at the message, my emotions a tangled mess. Part of me wanted to delete it, to sever all ties and move on. But another part, the part that still remembered the good times, was curious. I needed closure, one way or another. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown, a neutral ground where we could talk without the weight of our home bearing down on us. When I arrived, Mary was already there, nervously stirring a cup of coffee. She looked up as I approached, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and regret. Jack, she said softly, standing up to greet me. Thank you for coming. I nodded, sitting down across from her. Mary, what did you want to talk about? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she clasped them together. I've had a lot of time to think since everything happened. I realize now how much I've hurt you, how much I've destroyed our marriage. And I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked, and I could see the genuine pain in her eyes. I never meant for it to get this far. I was selfish, and I took you for granted. You have every right to hate me, but please, Jack, I want to make things right. I want to fix this. I looked at her, feeling a pang of sadness. How, Mary? How can you possibly fix this? The trust is gone. The damage is done. I know, she said quickly, tears welling up in her eyes. But I am willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I've already ended things with Tom. I've cut off all contact with him. It's over. She reached across the table, her hand trembling as she took mine. I love you, Jack. I know I've made the worst mistake of my life, but I can't imagine my life without you. Please, give me a chance to prove that I can be the wife you deserve. Her words hung in the air, a desperate plea for forgiveness. I looked at her, my heart torn. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the regret etched on her face. But the wounds were still fresh, and the pain of her betrayal lingered. Mary, I began, my voice soft but firm. I believe that you're sorry, and I believe that you want to make things right. But I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. The trust we had, the foundation of our marriage, it's been shattered. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand that, Jack, and I'm not asking for everything to go back to the way it was overnight. I'm asking for a chance to rebuild, to show you that I can change, that I can be the partner you need. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. This isn't something that can be fixed with words, Mary. It's going to take time and a lot of it, and I can't promise anything. I need to protect myself from getting hurt again. I know, she whispered, her grip on my hand tightening. And I'm willing to wait. I'll do whatever it takes, for however long it takes. Just please, let's not give up on us. We sat there in silence for a few moments, the weight of our situation pressing down on us. I could see the genuine regret in her eyes. the determination to make amends. But I also knew that forgiveness wasn't something that could be rushed. It would be a long, difficult road, and the scars might never fully heal. "All right," I said finally, my voice heavy with resignation. "We can try, but it's going to be on my terms, at my pace. And if at any point I feel like it's too much, we stop. Do you understand?" She nodded vigorously, relief washing over her face. "I understand. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for giving us a chance." As we left the cafe, a part of me felt lighter, the first step towards healing taken. But another part remained guarded, knowing that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges. Mary had shown regret, and now it was up to both of us to see if that regret could pave the way to redemption. The conversation with Mary at the cafe lingered in my mind for days. Her tearful pleas, her promises to change, and her regret were all genuine, but they did little to quell the storm of emotions raging inside me. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Tom, laughing, kissing, and sharing moments that should have been ours alone. The anger simmered just beneath the surface, growing stronger with each passing day. I had agreed to give her a chance, but deep down, I knew forgiveness was not something I could offer. The pain of her betrayal was too deep, the wounds too raw. Instead of healing, I felt the need for retribution, a burning desire to make her feel the same level of hurt and devastation she had inflicted upon me. One night, as I sat alone in our living room, the house eerily quiet, a thought began to take shape. If Mary had destroyed our marriage, then she should face the consequences. Not just the loss of my love, but everything she held dear. I would leave her with nothing, making her feel the full weight of her actions. I started to plan meticulously, thinking through every detail. My first step was to consult with a lawyer, ensuring I had the legal means to execute my plan. I needed to understand how to protect my assets and make sure Mary walked away empty-handed. The lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Susan, listened to my story with a mixture of sympathy and professional detachment. "Jack, you have options," she said after I laid everything out for her. "We can ensure that your assets are protected. Given the evidence of her infidelity, we can make a strong case in court. But you need to be prepared for a fight. These things can get messy." "I'm prepared," I replied, my voice steely. "I want her to feel the consequences of her betrayal. She took everything from me, and now it's my turn." Over the next few weeks, I followed Susan's advice to the letter. I began transferring funds to a separate account, ensuring that my finances were secure. I documented everything, every piece of evidence of her affair, every financial transaction. I made sure that my name was on all the important documents. The house, the car, the investments. Everything was under my control. At the same time, I maintained a facade of civility with Mary. We continued to meet occasionally, her attempts to rebuild our relationship growing more desperate. Each time she reached out, each time she pleaded for another chance, it only fueled my resolve. I played the part of the conflicted husband, biding my time until the moment was right. I also began to subtly distance myself from her. I cut back on our meetings, making excuses about work and personal space. I wanted her to feel the isolation, to sense that something was slipping away. The look of worry and confusion in her eyes, when I canceled another dinner date, was a small but satisfying victory. As the weeks turned into months, my plan started to take shape. I hired a private investigator to gather more evidence, ensuring that my case against her was airtight. The investigator, a grizzled veteran named Mike, provided me with even more damning proof of her affair. Photos, videos, and recordings of her interactions with Tom. It was all there, a veritable arsenal of evidence ready to be deployed. Finally, the day came when I was ready to put my plan into action. I invited Mary over to the house, the same house that now felt like a battleground. She arrived, hopeful and anxious, clearly expecting a breakthrough in our strained relationship. "Jack," she said, her voice trembling with anticipation, "I've been waiting for this. I know things have been hard, but I believe we can get through this. We can rebuild." Pretending that everything was fine while plotting my revenge against Mary required a level of emotional control I never knew I possessed. Each day felt like a performance, a carefully orchestrated act to ensure she remained unsuspecting. The closer I got to executing my plan, the more crucial it became to maintain the illusion of normalcy. The first step was to master my emotions. I couldn't let my anger or hurt show, no matter how intense they were. Instead, I focused on projecting a calm and collected demeanor. When Mary called or texted, I responded with measured politeness, never giving away the turmoil within. I even agreed to meet her for dinner a few times, carefully selecting neutral public places where we could talk without the weight of our past bearing down on us. At these dinners, I played the role of the conflicted but open-minded husband. I listened as she spoke about her regret and her desire to make things right. I nodded at the appropriate moments, offering small smiles of encouragement, all the while keeping my true feelings hidden. It was exhausting but necessary. I needed her to believe that reconciliation was still possible and that I was considering her pleas. At home, I kept myself busy with work and hobbies, ensuring I was never idle long enough for my thoughts to betray me. I threw myself into projects, filling my days with tasks that required focus and precision. The busier I was, the less time I had to dwell on the anger and betrayal that simmered just beneath the surface. When Mary visited the house, I made sure to keep things light and casual. We would sit in the living room, talking about mundane topics, work, the weather, plans for the weekend. I avoided any conversation that could lead to discussions about our relationship or her affair. She seemed relieved by this, mistaking my distance for a sign that I was moving past the pain. "Jack, I appreciate you giving us this time," she said one evening as we sat on the couch with a bottle of wine. "I know it's not easy, but I believe we can get through this." I smiled with a tight, controlled expression. "It's a process, Mary, one step at a time." The more I distanced myself emotionally, the more she seemed to cling to the hope that we could rebuild. It was a delicate balance, maintaining enough warmth to keep her from suspecting my true intentions while ensuring I didn't let her get too close. Each interaction was a tightrope walk, a careful dance of words and actions. My friends and colleagues noticed the change in me, but I deflected their concerns with practiced ease. "I'm just focusing on myself right now," I would say when asked about my subdued demeanor, taking things one day at a time. Behind closed doors, I meticulously planned each step of my revenge. The legal documents were ready. The financial safeguards were in place. I reviewed everything with my lawyer, ensuring there were no loose ends. Susan was impressed by my thoroughness, her professional demeanor masking any personal opinions she might have had about my plan. "You're doing everything by the book, Jack," she said during our last meeting. "When the time comes, you'll be in a strong position." "That's what I need," I replied, my voice cold. She deserves to feel the consequences of her actions. As the days turned into weeks, my resolve only grew stronger. The emotional distance I had created between Mary and myself became a protective barrier, shielding me from any lingering doubts or second thoughts. She continued to reach out, her messages filled with hope and regret, but I remained steadfast in my plan. One evening, as I stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, I received another text from Mary. "Thinking of you. Can we talk later?" I stared at the message, my mind calculating the appropriate response. After a moment, I typed back, "Sure, let's chat tomorrow." The simplicity of the exchange belied the complexity of my emotions. Each word, each action, was a piece of a larger puzzle, a strategy designed to bring about the ultimate conclusion. I had to keep my focus, to maintain the emotional distance that would allow me to see this through to the end. Mary's regret and attempts at reconciliation were genuine, but they came too late. The damage was done, and no amount of apologies could undo the betrayal I had suffered. The plan was in motion, and I was determined to see it through. As I sat down to dinner that night, alone in the quiet of our home, I felt a strange sense of calm. The emotional distance I had cultivated was now a part of me, a necessary shield against the pain. The end was in sight, and with it the promise of a new beginning, one where Mary would finally understand the true cost of her actions. The day I had been meticulously planning for months finally arrived. It was time to deliver the final blow and ensure Mary felt the full weight of her betrayal. The divorce papers were ready, the evidence gathered, and my resolve unshakable. I knew what I had to do, and I was prepared for the consequences. I met Mary at a neutral location, a small park we used to visit during happier times. The contrast between our past and present felt poetic, a reminder of how far we had fallen. She approached with a hopeful expression, believing that this meeting was another step towards reconciliation. "Jack," she began, her voice soft and filled with hope. "Thank you for meeting me here. I've been thinking a lot, and I believe we can still fix this. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. Mary, there's something I need to give you, I said, handing her an envelope containing the divorce papers. Her face paled as she opened the envelope, her hands trembling. Jack, what is this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It's over, Mary, I said, my voice cold and detached. I'm filing for divorce. Inside that envelope, you'll find all the evidence of your affair with Tom. I've documented everything. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. You can't be serious. We were working on this, Jack. I thought you were willing to give us another chance. I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. There is no us, Mary. You destroyed our marriage the moment you decided to cheat. I've given you every opportunity to come clean, to make amends, but it's too late. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the papers to her chest. Please, Jack. I know I made a mistake, but we can still work this out. Don't do this. But my mind was made up. The time for forgiveness had passed. I'm sorry, Mary, but this is the end. I've already filed the papers with the court. You will receive a formal notice soon. The shock and despair on her face were exactly what I had anticipated, but seeing it in person brought a bittersweet satisfaction. She had to face the consequences of her actions, and there was no turning back. In the weeks that followed, the divorce proceedings moved swiftly. My lawyer, Susan, had ensured that every detail was meticulously covered. We presented the evidence in court, photos, messages, recordings, all painting a clear picture of Mary's infidelity. The judge reviewed everything with a stern expression, and I could see the judgment forming in his eyes. Mary's lawyer tried to defend her, to paint her in a sympathetic light, but the evidence was overwhelming. Her betrayal was undeniable, and no amount of excuses or apologies could change that. As the proceedings continued, I watched Mary closely. The hope and determination that had once defined her were slowly being replaced by despair and resignation. Finally, the day of the judgment arrived. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Mary sat across from me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked like a shadow of the woman I once loved, her spirit broken by the weight of her actions. The judge cleared his throat, breaking the silence. After reviewing all the evidence, it is clear that the grounds for divorce are valid. The court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Jack Harrison. Mrs. Mary Harrison is to receive no alimony, and the division of assets will be as follows. Mr. Harrison retains full ownership of the marital home, all financial accounts, and personal property. Mary's gasp echoed through the courtroom, a sound of utter devastation. She turned to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and anguish. Jack, please, she whispered, her voice cracking. Don't do this. I have nothing left. I met her gaze, my expression hard. You made your choice, Mary. Now you have to live with the consequences. As we left the courtroom, the reality of her situation began to sink in. Mary had lost everything, her home, her financial security, and the respect of those around her. She was left with nothing, a stark reminder of the cost of her betrayal. The final blow had been delivered, and there was no going back. As I walked away, a sense of closure washed over me. The pain of her infidelity would never fully disappear, but knowing that she had faced the consequences brought a measure of peace. The journey had been long and arduous, but I had emerged stronger, ready to rebuild my life from the ruins of our shattered marriage. And Mary, left with nothing but regret, would have to find her way forward, forever haunted by the choices she had made. After the divorce, life took on a different hue for me. It was as if a heavy fog had lifted, revealing a landscape of possibilities that had been obscured for too long. I threw myself into rediscovering who I was outside of the confines of a failed marriage, and each day brought a renewed sense of purpose. One of the first things I did was reconnect with friends I had lost touch with during my marriage. They welcomed me back into their lives with open arms, expressing relief that I had finally taken the steps needed to move forward. We spent evenings reminiscing about old times and making plans for the future, and their support became a pillar of strength for me. Work also became a sanctuary of sorts. I threw myself into my projects with renewed vigor, finding solace in the structure and challenges it provided. Colleagues noticed my increased focus and determination, and I took on new responsibilities that pushed me to grow professionally. During this time, I also rediscovered my love for the outdoors. I started hiking again, exploring trails that wound through breathtaking landscapes. The solitude of nature offered me a chance to reflect on the past and envision a future untethered to the pain of betrayal. Each step was a reminder of my resilience and the healing power of time. While rebuilding my life, thoughts of Mary inevitably surfaced. I heard through mutual friends that she was struggling, financially and emotionally. Part of me felt a pang of empathy, recognizing the depth of her regret and the consequences of her actions. However, I knew that her journey toward healing was one she had to navigate on her own. Occasionally, messages from Mary would find their way to me, a mix of apologies and pleas for reconciliation. Each time, I responded with a measured courtesy, maintaining a respectful distance. I had closed that chapter of my life decisively, and there was no room for revisiting the past. As time passed, the bitterness and anger that once consumed me gradually faded. In their place grew a profound sense of peace and acceptance. I no longer defined myself by the betrayal I had endured. Instead, I focused on nurturing the relationships and passions that brought joy into my life. I immersed myself in new hobbies and experiences, from cooking classes to travel adventures. Each new endeavor was a testament to my newfound freedom and the limitless possibilities that lay ahead. I surrounded myself with positivity, determined to create a future that was rich with fulfillment and purpose. Meanwhile, Mary's life seemed to unravel further. The consequences of her actions had left her isolated and estranged from our community. She faced the stark reality of rebuilding her life from scratch, grappling with the repercussions of losing not just our marriage, but also the respect and support of those around her. I couldn't help but reflect on the lessons learned from my tumultuous journey with Mary. The experience taught me invaluable truths about resilience, forgiveness, and the importance of staying true to oneself. I had emerged from the storm stronger and more self-assured, ready to embrace the possibilities that awaited me. As I moved forward, I carried with me a sense of gratitude for the support of friends and family who had stood by me during my darkest moments. Their unwavering encouragement had been a lifeline, guiding me through the turbulent waters of divorce and betrayal. Looking back, I realized that the journey had been as much about letting go as it had been about moving forward. I had let go of anger and resentment, replacing them with compassion and understanding. I had let go of the need for closure from Mary, finding closure instead within myself. Each day brought new challenges and opportunities, and I faced them with a renewed sense of resilience and optimism. The scars of betrayal remained, but they no longer held power over me. They were reminders of the strength I had discovered within myself, a strength that had carried me through the darkest chapter of my life. And so, with each sunrise and each new day, I embraced the promise of a future filled with hope and possibility. Mary's presence lingered in my memories, a reminder of a chapter closed but never forgotten. As I forged ahead, I carried with me the lessons learned and the confidence gained from overcoming one of life's greatest challenges. The journey toward healing was ongoing, but I was no longer defined by the pain of the past. I had found peace within myself, and that was a victory in itself, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for growth and renewal.